Andy, in your lecture today, you talked about the field of cultural demands, and you had a particular slide about this. And it talked about different demands upon our young people's time and energy and how religion and youth group fits into all of that. Can you explain a bit more about that for us and about the role that identity formation plays in how we manage our time like that?
Yeah, it's actually a slide and a diagram. It's been kind of central to my thinking for too long. Almost embarrassingly how long I've used it, but it just so kind of encapsulates and I think illustrates the issue. And it's really this transition, thinking about multiple kind of cultural, I don't know if you would call them cultural categories or zones or domains, thinking of family and economy and society as like who's in, who's out, who's clean, who's unclean, if you can kind of impose that on another kind of cultural reality, and how religion functions within that. And what I try to really show with it and try to show today is how the imagination that we have for what is good or what we invest our time and our energy in, maybe if we rewind 100 years or so, really was religion and family. Like those were these categories that really set terms for our lives, and that those were fundamentally relational categories, not always positively relational, but nevertheless you were in a kind of a rich network or intricate network of relationships. And they did actually demand, I think, that you put aside your own individual pursuits for the good of the group. Where this is flipped, I think, in late modernity and maybe very late modernity as we're in now, where the higher goods become more driven by what I call society and economy. So kind of how we evaluate ourselves as succeeding, and then I guess how we make capital, in whether that's social capital or real kind of money capital. And that those become the driving goods. And so you see this kind of transition even in a parental imagination, where before parents wanted to make sure their kids fit into the religious community, fit into the dynamics, perspectives, narratives of the family. Now it's not about subordinating your own individual will for the good of the group, because the group is what forms maybe your identity, but it's about being a unique self. And it becomes a parent's job. You don't do that by yourself. It becomes a parent's job to help their kid succeed in that. And so one of the ways, I didn't point on this in the lecture, but often we'll talk about how family and religion are not inherently competitive categories. Now, I'm not saying that they're like pure, unable to be deconstructed, or they can embezzle power dynamics that could be problematic, but they tend not to be competitive in the sense that you want to be. There's an inherent ranking system within them, where economy and society there are. I mean, you have to be top of your class or in the top 10% of everyone who's taking the SATs to be able to get into the school that will get you the degree, that will get you the position at the hedge fund in New York. So there becomes a more competitive driving force, which then leads parents, if those are the high goods, they want their kids to do well in those, and it leads them to have to really work hard to help their kids succeed in that competition, which was probably one of the elements we didn't talk about enough in the lecture, was how parents are driven to get their kids involved in all these activities because they sense that they need to compete, that this is a competitive environment, and they need to be involved at every step because they got to help their kid win. However win might work, but it isn't really, we say this kind of jargony now in our culture, like, I'm winning, it's, hashtag win, and I know that's kind of a fun thing to say, you get, I don't know, this is a terrible analogy, but you get an extra chicken McNugget and you're like winning, you got the 6 piece, but there are 7 in there. So it can be kind of a benign, fun thing, but it also kind of stretches deeper to our social imaginary, where we think living a good life is winning, which is the imposing of these kind of categories and these goods of economy and society being the driving reality.
And the church has a different voice in that. I mean,
or the churches that are quote unquote succeeding have found ways to compete in economy and society.
That's interesting.
When you're in those places, especially as a parent trying to help your kid win, what you're really looking for is resources that can help get to whatever level of winning that might be. So you can turn and then look at the church and say, is this church giving us the resources to help our kids win? And usually what that will mean, more than something concrete, like they're giving them a coach that can help them hit a curveball, or they're giving them the how to work the short answers in the exam or something. Usually it is, well, will this keep our kid from making a bad decision?
Mm.
So we want them involved in a youth group as much as they have time, so they don't make a bad decision and derail the other areas they're trying to win. Or can this at least maybe make them religiously literate enough that they're not just a completely dull person.
Right. They can pass, and they can have some passing knowledge
Right.
about these things, and
Yeah.
appear intelligent and eloquent about these things enough to
Right.
help win.
Right. Help win a little bit. Yeah. And then maybe there's people in the church who can give them some social capital. I mean, I don't think any of these things are like necessarily explicit, but I think that they're under the surface.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.